Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So I read a grand total of 5 books for the month of March, which was definitely less than my past few months, but I sort of expected that I would read less this month. Basically just because it's spring, it's warming up. It's kind of hard to justify sitting around reading a book when I'd rather just be doing things outside. I still love to read, but you know, there's more fun things to do sometimes than read. And so my thought process has been, I'll just read a lot in the evenings, you know, when the sunshine has gone down and there's nothing left to do for the day. But then I end up crashing around 8 p.m. No joke, because I'm so exhausted. So yeah, not as much reading got done, but I am still really happy with the books that I read this month because they were all great books. I mean, excellent. There was none in there that were even like, you know, so-so or not that great. All of them were really great. So I read 5 books, and the first 2 that I read, I already made a video on and sort of talked about them individually. And I will link to that video in the description if you don't want to hunt for it. But those first 2 books I read were The Family Romanov and Salem's Lot by Stephen King. And Family Romanov was by Candace Fleming, I think. But yeah, I'll link to that video if you want to hear more about it. But both of those were 5-star reads for me. I love them and highly recommend them. And then the next book that I read this month was Bambi by Felix Salten. This book was similar to Disney's film Bambi. I did feel like Disney did sort of keep to the storyline more with this than they did with The Fox and the Hound, which was way different. But it was interesting to see the differences. And of course, I loved the book more. Well, no, I take that back. I won't say I love the book more than the movie. The book and the movie are both excellent stories. They're just different. Different enough where I don't feel comfortable comparing them, because I love Bambi. I love the movie Bambi. And then I loved the book Bambi, which is what the movie was based off of. But if you haven't, by some miracle, seen Disney's version of Bambi or know anything about the story, this is about a deer who is born a wild deer in the forest, and it's just about him growing up as a deer in a natural setting, and him and the other animals interacting, but not in a too human-like or cartoony way as what happened in the movie. So their interactions, and then how they all deal with man in the forest and his intrusions into the wild, and sort of the drama and the heartache that comes with that. And so it was just a really solid animal classic for me. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. And yeah, I do highly recommend it if you like animal stories or you're interested in reading books about Disney stuff, you know, that Disney has based their stuff off of. I always think it's interesting to see how much Disney has sugared things up and made it fluffy and bright and lovely, and comparing that, because obviously this had some darker elements into it and more just realness to it than a cartoon movie, which is understandable. But yeah, I really love this, and everyone should read it, I think. Everyone should read this. The next book that I read this month was The Plague Dogs by Richard Adams, and Richard Adams is the same author who wrote Watership Down, which I read back in December, I think, and I loved it. I adored it. It was an excellent book, and it should be, well, I was going to say it should be required reading, but no, it shouldn't. Nothing, I hesitate to say anything should be required reading, because that tends to make people just go into it with a bias, like I'm not going to like it, or that's how I always went into it, sort of. But yeah, this was a really solid, good book. The only thing I didn't like about this book that made it not quite as good as Watership Down for me was the language in it, which was funny and interesting, because I actually had to read a lot of the dialogue out loud to understand what was being said. This story takes place in English countryside, and it's about two dogs who escape from a research facility and them just like traveling and trying to survive, and then the whole countryside is sort of in this panic about these research dogs who have escaped from the facility and sort of in their mind are wreaking havoc and causing panic, and like they bring out the big guns, get the military involved and everything, all for these dogs. And it bounces back and forth between the perspective of the dogs and the people at the research facility, and just sort of different people along the way. The farmers and the fox, I would have to read their dialogue out loud though, because I could not read it and really understand what they're saying. Now, when I read it out loud, I could understand it. I think because it was written in, I guess you'd call it a English side, or an English country accent, what would be a really heavy country accent for England. I don't know how to compare it for like American language and stuff. I know sometimes people have a hard time understanding accents here, and there's certain accents that are associated with being in the country or certain parts of the United States. And for me, reading these dialogues out loud, it sounded like an English country accent to me. Other than that though, and there were parts where I had to sort of skim, because I'm sure there was a purpose to it being in there, but some of it just got so boring, just for a few pages at a time, that I would sort of skim it, get the idea, and be like, okay, can we get back to the main characters now? But truly, other than that, it was an excellent book, and I enjoyed it so much, and was a little bit like harrowing, especially towards the last quarter of the book or so. Like, it was a nail biter for me. If you liked Watership Down, or if you haven't read Watership Down, read that and then read this, because they are both really good books. And the last book that I read this month was The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. And I started this last night. I read the first chapter and I wanted to read more, but I prioritized going to bed instead. Caught up this morning, started reading it, and just finished it before I decided to film this video. This book was excellent. It was excellent. Now, Sue Monk Kidd, I actually read another book of hers first, which I read just a few months ago, and that was The Dance of the Dissident Daughter, which is about her spiritual journey. It was a nonfiction book about her and her spiritual journey and her struggles with Christianity and getting in touch with her sacred feminine, and I really enjoyed that. And so I was like, you know what, I need to give Sue a chance with this big name book that everyone knows about, or at least people, I think most people have watched the movie. But excellent book. And if you don't know, it's about a girl, a young teen girl who lives in South Carolina on her farm with her father. And what has happened is her mother died, and so she's left with an abusive father. He's not very nice to her, and she ends up running away with their house servant, which is a black woman. And they run away together because they get in trouble in the beginning of the book. And so she decides, I'm done. I'm going to go get Rosaline. I can't believe I'm already like struggling with her name. Rosaline. We'll go get Rosaline, and we're getting out of here. Like, we got to go. So they leave, and she is sort of going on this journey to find more about her mother and get away from her father. And so they leave, and they end up at the house of beekeepers, 3 black sisters who live together and make their whole living off of bees and honey. And I have to tell you, reading this book, I mean, the pages just melted past me like butter. I mean, one second I would be on page 40, the next I was on page 125. It was just, they just glided so quickly. The story was so smooth. The characters were really well done. And if I didn't mention it, it takes place in the 60s during the civil rights movement. And so there's a lot of that in the background, the tension that goes with that, and that plays a part into the story with her, and then the sisters that she lives with, and then her, I guess, former house servant, which is now just this motherly figure in her life that she is sticking with, you know. And they are all sort of become this family, and it's a really sweet story, but it's not all, you know, rosy posy. Like, I thought it would be lighter and more, you know, everything, here's some bad stuff, but now everything's good, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't like that for me. I mean, it totally kept me interested in the story. And so I really like this book. I got 3 pages from the end, and I had to stop with it in my lap, and I cried for a while. And I don't know if that, I say that a lot about a lot of books, so I don't know how much meaning that has now when I say I cried, because clearly I'm a crier, but I did. I had to take a pause, and I just had to cry and just feel the feelings. And then I read the last 3 pages of the book, and I loved it. I really, really loved it. So I would read this book if I were you guys and you're looking for something to get into. I thought this was a perfect springtime/summertime book, and so I wanted to give this a shot, and I'm so glad that I did. So, yeah, those were all the books that I read in March. And again, had a really good reading month. Didn't read as many books, but the ones that I did read were just excellent. They blew my mind away. I love them. So, I highly recommend all of them, and please let me know if you have read any of these and what your thoughts were, or if there's any of these that look interesting to you and you want to read them, and I highly encourage you to do so, and then tell me what you thought of them. Yeah, and I will see you guys again soon, and I hope you have a great day.